Welcome back. And away from agriculture, let's talk about reputation. Let's talk about branding, maybe by extension, the entire gamut of marketing. I've been joined on the program by, for a second time, by the way, Abena Ike. She's a brand and marketing consultant joining us right here in our Lagos today. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
How have
Good
you been?
morning. I've been great. How about you?
Very well.
Good.
So I like to start this conversation from a national perspective because I think I learned that at the NIPRO week that held in Uyo in Akwa Ibom State, there were some conversations around reputation management of Nigeria. The jury is divided over that, apparently, when it comes to our reputation in terms of all of this. So, but one thing we can all agree on, without any doubt, is to the effect that the trust level of citizens on their government is very low. Citizens don't trust their government, and it takes a lot. In fact, I say that as soon as you join politics in Nigeria, you are regarded as a thief already. They've already said you're guilty before you even, so you have to prove that you're not guilty in that sense, unlike what the law says, that you're innocent until proven guilty. So let's start from national. Since we know the trust quotient is quite low, and citizens really want to see change, and government keeps giving them one story or the other, whether it's effective or ineffective. So from the end of government, how should government approach to ensure that citizens are loyal to country? The word we use is patriotism. Let's start from there.
Okay. So I would like to link it to marketing.
Exactly.
And the reason I like to link it to marketing because it's no different. And the reason it's no different is because consumers lose trust when there's a disconnect between what they want or what they need versus what a brand, or in this case, a government, is doing, right? So from the marketing perspective, if you're looking, if a customer doesn't trust a brand, their experiences that the customer may have encountered, that left a poor taste in their mouths. So the brand, in this case a government, would need to take a step back and understand, okay, these are the experiences that you went through and ended up, yielding these results. How do I fix it? So it's about going back to the experiences, and I'll take it back to marketing. As a brand, the experiences that your customers, encounter is very critical. And unfortunately, we find that a lot of brands don't really pay much attention to it. The goal is what I want to achieve, what I want to put out there, and that is it. I want to, increase sales, get me what I need to increase my numbers. And it's possible that that's what we're also seeing, right? On a national level, there's a goal, which is great that there's a goal, but are citizens being taken into consideration? What citizens need being taken into consideration? And I think that's probably where the disconnect, from the national level could be coming through.
I'll give you the clear case before my colleague comes in.
Okay.
Things that brings some of this lack of patriotism that we call brand loyalty in that sense. First, citizens don't believe their votes count. Citizens also, yes, citizens don't believe their vote counts. Citizens don't see how their commonwealth is managed effectively for AKA good governance. In fact, it got so bad that the army raised a concern that, there's this quota system as to people joining the military. And the Southeast, they were screaming like, you have slot, your people are not joining the military. And the narrative was to the effect that how many of the people from that area eventually become, say, service chiefs. So that kind of, although we have one now, but it takes a while. So we see maybe people from other parts of the country attaining that of that position. So I just giving you like 3 in terms of appointments on one hand, in terms of vote counting or not counting on the other hand, in terms of poor governance.
Yeah.
So I've given you a case study. I know it's a big burden.
Yes.
If you can help us resolve it before we come to persons and organizations.
Yes. So when trust is broken, so when you're looking at it from the national point of view, like the government experiences that you've highlighted, those are experiences that have broken trust, right? Now, in order for citizens to be able to come back and trust again, the wrongs would need to be righted, right? So, or would need to be made right. So one, if I don't feel that my vote counts, for example, why should I vote? And why would I trust that you're actually going to do what you're telling me you would do? And so on the government side or the brand side, what is critical is making sure that you're listening to what the customer or your citizens are telling you. This is what the citizens are saying. How can the government, I'm trying to stay away from politics, that's why I'm pausing. How can the government ensure that people are being listened to, but at the same time, your goals are actually being achieved? Because the government also has goals to achieve, right? But then people might also have their own views of how they think things need to be done or what they believe they need. There is certain information the government might have that we don't have, right? That might also impact the decisions that are made that we might not understand. So it's critical that there is a clear understanding of, or listening, more like the listening ear needs to be there on the government side, but also that it's critical for the government to clearly communicate what the objectives are and what they seek to achieve. And this way, both parties are clear on where it's going, so that it's not one person shouting that, I don't think that this is, delivering what I need, so it wouldn't work. And then the other person, just doing whatever they want to do because that's what it would help them to achieve their goals. At least that is, those are my views
the
on
conversation may have taken a life of its own already for, giving this direction. And I kind of like where Jeffrey started off from, the NIPR's, strategy of setting up a Nigeria reputation management group, tasked with the responsibility of, sort of transforming Nigeria's image. And it's a very, very critical task, important task, even if, there's so many reasons why Nigeria may not necessarily have a good reputation on the international community. Now, as this group proceeds to manage Nigeria's reputation, what would be your recommendation as a branding strategy for this group? For instance, the Minister of Trade says President Bola Tinubu's many foreign trips have secured Nigeria $50.8 billion in potential investment, not in actual investment. So if this group were to be speaking to, these group of potential investors, what should it be saying, to convince them to put the money on the ground?
So first of all, I think a lot of work needs to be done in terms of fixing our reputation. And, whilst those sorts of trips might be great, at the end of the day, the average person does not look at the trips. The average person is going online to do research to find out, okay,
the investor, right?
Yes. So what is online about this person or this country? Now, if any of us goes on Google and type Nigeria, what will be the first thing that comes up? We need to go back and look at how we can also control the narrative, right? Because unfortunately, the narrative about the nation is not positive anywhere, right? So how do we take control of the narrative that is there? And one of the many ways to do that is actually going through online, digital platforms. What are people saying about us? What are the stories there about Nigeria? What are the stories there about Nigerians? Are Nigerians putting out more positive stories about the culture, about, doing business, about the way of life there? Have we done enough? Because those kinds of the big things will not necessarily be what would give us what we need, because most of the people who would actually be coming in might not be looking at that. So I think, we need to look at it on different fronts. I would suggest that let's look at it at the grassroots level. So how does our digital footprints look like? How does our digital reputation look like? Because that's where most people are going to search for information.
Let's practicalize it now. You know, the last time you were here, we talked more basically about the theoretical aspect of branding. And we just got off a conversation with, you know, an agri-investor in the field. And he talked about, you know, bold strategies, you know, at storage facilities. But we have 90% of, you know, the practitioners in that space being smallholder farmers who may not necessarily have the capital for sophisticated infrastructure, for mechanized farming and, you know, storage facilities in that sense. So for those farmers who may be the ones that would be projecting Nigeria positively with their little effort from where they are, where is the place of branding in their effort, you know, and how they can tell their stories using social media, for instance? Yeah.
So this is where I would also like to link government
Okay.
to it, right? So if government were to take a stand and say that, and then also linking it back to narratives, government can take a stand and say that, you know what, we see these smallholder farmers who are doing great work. They have great stories to tell, and their stories can positively help shape our image. We want to put them out there. The government can we can actually do, you know, testimonials or documentaries around their experiences, the positive experiences, right? Because there are positive experiences. Let's tell those stories and put them out there. We have platforms. Social media is available. We have TV stations. And so, you know, giving them that platform, be able to tell their stories and really elevating it and putting it out there can possibly help. So it wouldn't necessarily be the farmer putting themselves out there because they might not even have a social media platform to be managing it. But how can other stakeholders like the government, how can, you know, stakeholders like, you know, other organizations that project or seek to project the country in a positive light help bring these stories out there? I'm a big believer in narratives, and the narrative, whether positive or negative, can have a major impact. So what are the narratives out there about us, and how do we change those narratives? And these are some of the ways that we can influence.
So the key thing and the key word we're trying to examine today is loyalty. When we posit it on the national scene, we're talking about patriotism, but when we say it in business or personality, brand, we still say loyalty in that sense. So walk us through maybe some starter kits on how to build loyalty, because in simple terms, it simply means that I'll return again and again and again to get the experience that I got from the first time. And not everyone is able to do that, because if anybody has that guarantee, then business will survive in terms of sustainability. So walk us through, how do you build loyalty?
You said the word experience. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, a lot of brands don't like to pay attention to creating the experiences for customers. The goal is, how do I make money? How do I increase sales, right? Give me a lot of leads. I want, you know, some really good sales qualified leads and help me convert to make money. But what is critical is the experience that you're creating. But you can't create a great experience if you don't know the customer, right? And so as a brand or as a government, you need to take time out to understand what your customer needs, what people are saying, how can I, you know, reach them and connect with them. And then once you have these insights, you're able to take a step back and say, okay, let me personalize your experience for you. So personalization is key. So if it's a government, and the government can say, okay, Lagos State residents prefer this. Akwa Ibom residents prefer that. This is what I would like to do in all of the states to make sure that I am meeting a need. Because the customer is not going to come back to you, will not be loyal to you if you're not meeting my need. If all you're pushing out to me is what you want. And eventually, yes, I might patronize you because I need the products that you're selling. But I am not going to come back if the experience is not great. But as a brand, you create an amazing experience if you know what my preference is. And by knowing my preference, you need to do a bit of research about me. And that's how you'll be able to succeed.
And so for, you know, practitioners in that space, those who are, you know, selling, you know, the very little things, you know, that meet the needs, what strategy do you prefer for them to, you know, put their brands forward such that they can be registered in the minds of those who have need for that particular product and keep returning?
So sometimes, it doesn't even have to be anything complicated. It could be, I'll give you an example. So I know someone who is helping build a brand. And basically what this person did was travel to various cities to understand what people, how people feel about the brand. Was able to speak to about 2,000 people, collated it in a spreadsheet with their feedback. And what the person did was to come back and produce content that speaks to what most people need. Now, what is happening now is that most of the people that are connecting with this brand feel so connected that it almost feels as if they own the brand. And when people own brands, they advocate for you. Now, going back to your question, for example, going back to your question, you're able to, you can simply engage your customers and say, you know what, customer A, how are you today? What's going on with you? And identify what the customer's need is. And as a small business, you can come back and say, you know what, this is what I would like to do for you, or this is what I can do to help this customer come back. And a lot of small businesses do that. And that's how customers are able to come back to them and, patronize their brands or products.
Well, thank you. Of course, we'll have to bring you back when we have and be ready again. We like to talk national issues. Maybe we'll use one state as an example at some point. Ben Ike is a brand and marketing consultant, always coming through for us when we need this expertise. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll switch gears. So cultural issues and national unity. We'll bring you that in just a moment. Stay with us.